performance training. I'm starting this Victory Performance podcast. Still working names, trying to figure that out, but this is something that my guest and I have been talking about for a while, and I was like, screw it, we're just going to start it. I don't need to get everything, organized and figured out exactly. I've been talking about this for a while, so I just want to get into it. So without further ado, this is George Collins.
Howdy.
One of my guys I have here that I train, MMA, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing. The man
Keel
likes
hauling, knife fighting, occasionally dip into some French cooking. Now, that's the most dangerous of all of them. You would never imagine it, but I would have you know that those snails right there, they're lethal little creatures, they is. I think they kill more people every year than great whites, honestly.
I do think you're correct, actually.
Yeah, that's probably true. It's probably true, man. You got to be very careful about that.
It's awesome. But, yeah, like I was saying, we've been talking about this for a while. George has kind of been with me since the beginning of what I've been doing with the fighters here at Victory Performance, and he's really helped me with my, development of trying to figure out what I want to do, who do I want to reach, how do I want to reach them, and actually building out a program for fighters to come. And since we've really locked that in, it's starting to blow up. It's been really awesome to see more guys coming in, training, working hard, winning more tournaments, winning matches, winning fights, and I just thought, who better to have on here for the first time than the man himself? So,
appreciate you. It's every program needs a guinea pig. It does, right? And thankfully, this one doesn't come with any of that super soldier serum that I had to get injected into my ass. We totally cut that out of, and I was very grateful for that because that's when things can go very strangely. So, happy to have been a part of the process.
Yeah, man. So let's just get into it. So, kind of walk me through your journey as a fighter. Where you started, and kind of how you got led down the path of where you're at today.
Kind of a crazy one because you take me back whenever I first started doing any kind of thing related to this. I guess it would have been like 7-8 years ago. Never knew I would ever step in a ring. Not even sparring. That wasn't on the table until very recently neither. But I was not at a good point in my health years ago. I used to be up to like about 200 pounds, if you can believe that.
No, I don't. He's told me this before.
Nobody
I
does.
Seen pictures, but I don't believe it.
Hey, nobody believes me when I tell them that, but I swear it was not some reverse liposuction if such a thing happens to exist. Probably not in my town, but I'm sure that somewhere in a clinic, if you like push enough buttons on the elevator, and then it'll go down instead of up, and you'll find something there. But that's not an experiment I was ever a guinea pig for. But anyways, at that point, I was not having a good time with my health. Indications were not going well, and especially for my family. I mean, all the men on my pop side of the family have a acute history of heart disease. Now, they live a long time. They live till they're like, 92, 93 or whatever.
Yeah.
But all of them gets cardiac arrest at some point. So at that point, I was like, I got to get out in front of that because no good ain't going to come of it. So tried a few different things to see what would stick, and just found that I really liked kickboxing, just hitting pads and hitting bags and things like that. But like I said, I mean, for the first few years I was doing it, it was just for fitness. I looked at the guys who would fight and say, "Oh, that's a whole other ball game, man. Like I can't get up there. Like, sky might be the limit for some folks. That's like a stratosphere kind of thing." So did that, and then I came out here to the Seattle area about 5 or 6 years ago, mainly for work, just because I'm from way out in the sticks, and I love it for some things, but career opportunity ain't one of them. So came out here, continued the journey a little bit, and I was able to get in with some really, really good folks who were the first ones who kind of put the ideas, which is like, hey, you ever thought about competing? Might be something to check out. And so look, I'm not the kind of guy to say no, right?
Especially, so you started kickboxing over in Idaho.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for fitness. I mean, it wasn't anything fight oriented at all. Yeah. But that was
like
kind of
group classes type thing.
Yeah, exactly like
guy
that.
on the microphone. All right, let's get it.
Kind of. I mean,
shout out to Tyler.
I was just thinking, it's a good friend of mine that does that for Title. Even Title is a little bit more. It's a little bit more fight oriented than what it was out there. I mean, that was very strict. Like, you got a bunch of university kids who got to blow off some steam during finals week, and they're just going to come in and rap on the bag as much as they can, right? So, so when I came out here, that was when like the I guess fight part of it kind of started, and even then I was still kind of just like, God, I don't know, I ain't no sparring guy or nothing like that, just because that was just a whole thing I never delved into before. But
which gym were you starting with?
Originally, I was at AMC for a little bit,
okay.
And then the world ended in March of 2020, so that's kind of that kind of blew things up for a little while, and all of us were at home doing jiu-jitsu with our cats for a little while, right? Which doesn't have to work as well as you might think it does, even if you promise all the fancy feast in the world at the end of it. So then later that year, stumbled into Gracie Baja Kirkland, and they were like, I don't know who had this guy in here, but we might as well keep him for a little bit.
Yeah.
Kaiju Kickboxing at the time was a vestigial organ of that, if you will, recently split off into its own shop. And November 2021 had my first real go at it, and been doing it ever since. So here we is in a roundabout way.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I guess I didn't really realize. Man, I think maybe we have talked about it before, but I don't think I really realized that I've known you kind of your whole journey since 2020. Then
pretty close, right? Because
I started coming in because you came in when October of 2020 or September about that.
Somewhere over thereabouts, yeah.
And then I started my jiu-jitsu journey in December of 2020. We're like almost twins.
Pretty much, yeah.
Bro, so
yeah, that's just about right.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, cool. So what were you thinking as you started going in? I mean, I know a little bit because you had messaged me and my wife before your first jiu-jitsu competition.
Yeah,
so
boy,
walk me through that a little bit.
Boy, howdy, how long do we got here? So there was a lot of mentality adjustment that needed to happen because even as I was prepping for, and I did a little bit of jiu-jitsu competitions before I decided to go all in on striking, and I didn't think I could do it. Honest to God, I really did not. I mean, it was, I remember sitting there just being like, what if I get tapped in 30 seconds? How are folks going to think? What are they going to think like that? Just, and anybody who's ever done that, well, maybe not anybody, right? I mean, I don't got the clairvoyance to read people's minds. If I did, I would put that skill to very good use. I assure you of that. But there was a lot of confidence building that needed to happen. And so I did. I reached out to some folks I knew had been in that for a little while and was just like, man, you ever deal with this and how do you get past that and all that? And I really got some good wisdom. And, probably the biggest one was like, ain't no one competition going to make or break you, right?
100%.
It really don't. I mean, and it might feel like that at the time. I mean, it definitely does. If you go in there, it's like, well, 30 seconds, I got tapped with the most ridiculous bullshit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But, and which, can definitely happen, right? It's kind of like, folks who, now I can understand when guys like get ready for them UFC fights and they get knocked out in 30 seconds. It's like, Jesus Christ. I mean, you go through that entire camp and then it just, you must be feeling lower than a snake's skin in a wagon rut.
Yeah.
Goddamn. So there was a lot that had to go there. And what I learned to do was just kind of like resign myself to the fact that, you're about to go into a competition. Whether it's a grappling match or a fight or whatever it might be. It's like, this is just happening. So you might as well accept it, and you're going to wake up on Sunday morning, and you ain't dead. Nobody know you was dead. Your cat didn't wake up one day with herpes, right? I mean, like there are not devastating consequences besides a bit of ego bruising that happens beyond that. And especially, this is very cliche to say, right? The whole, it ain't a marathon, it's a sprint. Other way around.
Other way around, yeah. I've never known George to mix up his analogies.
Well, something must be in the air tonight. I don't know if it's that full moon coming in, right? Humans is at 90% water or whatever that is.
Yeah,
and so
tide,
that moon gets closer, something must be happening. Anyway, so you're playing this thing for the long game, and when you start realizing that each individual fight or tournament or whatever it is that you do. And it don't just have to be fighting. It can be powerlifting, right? It can be anything that you in for the long haul. They're all steps in that process. And the outcome, sure, it matters, right? I mean, you don't want to be totally aloof to something like that. But every outcome is going to have value in some sense, right? Wins are great. I mean, because you have things that you execute on well, you go in with goals, and most, if not all of them, are achieved.
Yeah.
Losses, I actually find, are more valuable than anything else, right? I did
talk about that a little bit.
Because I did I did a pancration match back in September, right? It was the best damn match of that night. We got fight of the night easily, man.
It was a lot of fun.
I loved it. It was,
a
so
lot
great.
of fun. I loved watching that match.
Yeah, I had a bunch of fun with it, right? And, I get real deep in my own head all the time. It's something I still struggle with, right? There, even today, with all this development I talk about, there are definitely times when the confidence slips. And when it's like, do I really belong doing this? Or I'm looking at teammates who, do a lot better. I'm just like, I just don't know if I should touch the hem of the garment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I remember driving home after that, just being like, all right, George, what's going to happen tomorrow? This is going to be a test. You're at the fork of the road, and you can't take it this time.
Yeah.
So, but man, I woke up on Sunday with a fire under my ass. I want to get back in the gym. I want to learn. I want to get better. I want to assess everything like that. And that was also a really valuable lesson too, because it's the same thing, right? Sunday morning is still coming, and losses can be the best damn thing that happened to you if you know what to do with them and that you see them with what they are, right? And again, nobody's dead. Your wife ain't leaving you. You didn't lose your job. Nobody. You show up at work and it's like, hey, how'd you do in the fight? Nah, it didn't go so well. I lost or whatever. That sucks.
Yeah.
Get them on the next one, right? That's
simple.
That's what happens. Every catastrophic apocalypse that you build up in your head probably ain't going to come to fruition.
I really like what you just said there, though. Losses can be a great thing if you know what to do with them, right? I think a lot of times, especially kind of what you were talking about when you first had your first jiu-jitsu tournament and you didn't understand or you didn't know what you were going to feel, how you're going to react, how it was going to go. If you lost, what does that mean? How are people going to look at you? So that anxiety or that fear is definitely going to be something that cripples you. How'd you end up doing that tournament?
That one I got a bronze in that one. That was the Boise one that we all went out for. Yeah.
So awesome, right? So you had a couple losses in there, or maybe a loss.
Yeah, it was 1-1 on that one.
Yeah.
I think it's a double elimination or something like that.
So yeah, loss and but yeah, man, that knowledge of understanding what do I do with this can propel you so much further than wins ever can. Because I think a lot of times we get wins and we're like, all right, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And you just keep holding on to that of like, okay, I'm good at this, this, and this. And so you keep doing this, this, and this. And then someone comes in who's the counter to that. And you get beat. And now you have to realize, okay, where are the holes in my game, right? And so then you can start to work on those holes. But a lot of times it depends on the athlete because, and I've seen you on both ends of that, of a loss and you kind of go into, should I keep doing this? Or you pick it up and say, oh, I need to work on these things. And so a lot of times athletes who are going to succeed and go at a higher level, they're going to take that run and use that as motivation. When sometimes people take that and they just kind of fall into a hole.
Yeah, it's true.
I've seen that with athletes from junior high, high school, college, to the professional athletes that are in that headspace. And it's a really big thing to actually, it's a really big skill to learn how to take a loss and use that for your benefit.
Yeah, it reminds me of something I heard recently. It sounds paradoxical at first, but stick with me here.
All right.
So there's a fundamental question of, do you want to do things or do you want to be things? Now, on the surface, that sounds kind of inspirational, right? It's like, if I assume this is part of my identity and I really be it and I like embody it, then that's going to be my key to success.
Yeah.
But, hold on a second now, because that can be a real double-edged sword, right? And one of those points might be longer than the other, especially if you don't know what to do with a loss. Because if I go around saying like, well, I am a fighter, right? Or I am this, that, or those. It can be anything in your life. People get real big into their careers and things like that. In fact, if you think about in the United States, we're like kind of a unique culture in how much we throw our entire identities into what we do.
Yeah.
The whole idea of a work spouse. You even go up north to Canada, they have no idea what the hell that is.
Yeah,
well, maybe some of them do, but this idea that you live to work instead of working to live, right? And I think that mentality can permeate in something like sports, where if I was to say that I am a fighter, well, my worth as a person now hinges on the outcomes of that. And that adds a whole other level of stress that needs to go on to that, because it's like, if I keep winning, I'm on top of the damn world, right? Flying higher than a kite up in the stratosphere. But what happens when you lose? And I think that the folks that have a difficult time dealing with that, they've hitched their entire identity to it.
Wow.
Because then it's like, well, what? Yeah. So what am I now?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the same thing when folks retire too. And this ain't even just fighting. You know, there's a good friend of my family who was a pro NFL guy. Played for the Seahawks for a little while back, and he had a real rough time when he retired. He'll talk about that.
Yeah.
That he had thrown his entire life into this thing, and then he found out, dead ass, right? Swear on a stack of TV guides. Day that he retired, 2 days later, his phone was totally silent.
Really?
The folks that, who were his friends for that entire time. And the only people who ended up sticking with him were other pro guys who also retired and who could all kind of identify with that. And so he actually went on to, he now works as a counselor to help pro athletes transition off the field.
That's cool.
And, he's got to sit them down. He says, look, there's a lot of these guys that are in your crew, and they are bailing the first time that they get. Okay? And, some of them, they can't believe it till that phone doesn't start ringing no more.
Yeah.
So that, I think, can be a consequence of really throwing your entire identity into it like that. Now, you contrast that with, like, if I'm not going to be someone, could I just do things? Because at the end of the day, I am George, right? That's really what this meat vessel is that sits here in front of you. And what comprises that? Yeah, the fighting is a part of it. I also work in construction, right? And I sell building materials, and that's a big part of it too. I was in radio for 10 years. Did a whole lot of music, and it's still something I love doing, right? Playing music, listening to it, and all things like that. That's something that I do as well. And so, are you a fighter, or are you Xavier, who happens to fight and also does all these other things that people in your life appreciate? I'm not an expert at always adopting that model. It's a work in progress, I tell you what. But I find that the more I've moved in that direction, it's a lot easier to do things I see losses for what they is.
Yeah, that's cool. I really like that. Cool. Let's transition a little bit into now your journey as it was when you started coming to see me. It was fun working with you, man. Not that we're done working. We got plenty to do. But
it's been nice knowing you. All
right.
right.
Thanks for the podcast. Get out. No, but I say that because I remember when you first came in, you were dealing with a lot of shoulder tightness and pain, instability. You had a hunchback, and
it wasn't pretty.
It was hard for you to move. And so over this last, it's been a year and a half, almost 2 years. I think October will be 2 years.
Yeah, that's about right. 2021.
I've just watched you, develop your athleticism, get stronger. Your shoulder, bro, you stand so shoulders broad, wide. You got that Dorito body now. It's awesome. So kind of walk me through that and why you started coming, why you kept coming, and why you stuck around for me to experiment and use you as a guinea pig.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, you're right. Posture is the kind of thing where a lot of folks, you don't know how bad it is until it ain't bad no more, right? And then you're just like, God damn, I was, hunched over all the time, right? Yeah. My shoulders would get tired in a drill sergeant's asshole, all the time. You never heard that one before. Nobody in this town said any goddamn thing.
But, I'm telling you, I learn a new saying from George every day he comes in here. I said, I've been seeing him for 2 years, so I got a lot in there. But that was a good one.
I'll compile a dictionary one.
I might just put a Georgism counter at the bottom of the screen.
We're up to 5 of them at this point.
Oh, at least.
But for years I would just get these horrible knots in my shoulders, man. I had one point where I had to go in for body work almost every week. And that's been with me for a long time, even when I was younger, right?
Yeah.
And part of that too is, when I still had hair, if you can believe that. I'd have this habit where I'd reach up and play with it all the time just because I got to do something with my hands. I can't think straight if I don't. And so, it's been a chronic problem for a long ass time. And so I remember those first table sessions that we did, right? That's such a core part of this program that is the unsung hero, if you will. And just going through and finding those asymmetries, and they're just simple fixes too. That's the thing that really stands out.
Yeah.
Is that we did the whole assessment, did a little bit of correction over the next couple of weeks. Leaps and bounds, man. It's like going up K2, and without a bunch of having to tie myself into knots to do it or something. Yeah. So that's a real eye opener in terms of like, because how many people have bad backs or bad knees or whatever. Not even just athletes. I mean, folks that we know, right? And it definitely. I mean, I'm not knocking anybody for it because like, look, if you work a desk job and you don't have the space for a standing desk, well, I mean, that ain't your fault, right? I mean, it's just the environment that you're in, and it can really create that. And especially if I have to go to a job site that's like out in Port Angeles, I mean, I'm getting a lot of windshield time.
Driving.
Yeah, so it's a useful skill to have to be able to unkink a lot of that type of stuff. And so I remember just seeing that from the beginning, and just that was something where it's like, okay, this is somehow to pay attention to because there's clearly a science to this, and I've already felt in the first couple of weeks before we even touch any weight, pretty much.
Yeah.
That was a big appeal, and then also the fact that this is so fight focused, right? I've had other coaches, and they're all great. I mean, I've learned so much from every coach I've ever been with.
Yeah, for sure. But
I've also picked up along the way that conditioning for specific sports is important, right? I had a whole coach who's a fantastic baseball strength and conditioning guy. Yeah. If I knew someone who's playing baseball, I am totally sending him to Matt Haggerty.
Yeah.
Because that guy just, he knows it. He's played it, played over in New England for a long time, right? Which is where the stuff was born pretty much. So, and that's great. I picked up a lot from him. This being more fight focused, that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
And especially with you also being in the fight world as someone who can also empathize with that in terms of like what can build explosiveness for a punch because, I punch stuff too, right?
Yeah.
Or I also shoot for double legs. What really is conducive to that? And that's why I stuck with it. I mean, you were someone who obviously knew what you were doing, or at least knew way better than I did. And that's what I come in for is guidance, right? Yeah. If I knew how to write a program, I'd do it myself.
For sure.
I don't, so I don't. I mean, that's
pretty simple.
Yeah, right. Yeah, nice and simple like that. So, and the other thing too about why being a guinea pig, because like coaches are humans too, right? I mean, y'all are learning just like we are.
Yeah.
And you can't do that if you don't have people who are willing to try things out, see what works, throw away what don't. We talked about, off camera, it's like, every piece of media, whether it's a podcast or a television show or whatever it might be, they got that weird early installment weirdness, right?
Yep.
They're trying things, and some of them they keep, and some of them they don't, and you can tell when you kind of look in early bits of a show or whatever it might be. That's the same thing with a coaching program, right? When somebody is figuring out what works, what don't, and you need people to do that. So why not have it be me? Was my whole thought because I was getting benefit either way.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, man, it's been really fun going through that, and so, how I really started Fighters Academy was, like George said, I'm in the fighting community. I wrestled for a long time. Started training Professor Joshua from Gracie Baja, Kirkland. So he's like, dude, you wrestled, you gotta come try jiu-jitsu. I said, I've been fiending to get back on the mat. It's been a little bit of time, so let's try it out. Got there, felt really good to wrestle a little bit, but then we got on the ground and I was like, I have no clue what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to be on my back. This is weird.
I need laugh alert. I don't know what's going on here.
But that like reawakened that hunger I have for wrestling, and so I was like, man, I gotta get into this. The more I got into it, the more I started talking to people and learning their stories or learning their journeys and seeing people that I was like, man, I would have thought I would have beat you on the street, but you are whooping me right now. And I was like, man, this is what I want to do. I want to work with this population. And so when I first started Fighters Academy, it was like a big group class where everyone was kind of doing the same thing. And, I'm not knocking that if that's what some people are doing. It just wasn't me. Like, as I was doing it, it just felt like I was compromising a little bit on how I operate. Like you talked about my assessment, very detailed, and I like to program for specific people on specific things and help them through whatever injuries or asymmetries or whatever is going on with them. And So to do a group class, even though I could take somebody and say, hey, maybe modify it like this for you, or you do this a little differently, and try to make it so it's more appropriate for each person that was in there, it just felt like I was still kind of, compromising how I view training. And so...
And if I could speak to that too, I mean, that to me, it shows an appreciation for each individual person, and especially in a sport like this, where, I mean, it is an individual sport, but it also ain't, because nobody went out and won a championship after knocking out his shadow 50.
100%.
So it's a, but there is a level of individual tailoring that has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And let's be real, there's a lot of S&C coaches who ain't willing to do that.
Yeah.
There can definitely be like a ready-made program for everybody who, but even in those early days, I mean, you could tell you still had an eye for like what we were all doing.
Yeah.
You weren't just giving us like, hey, I found this on, CrossFit.net or whatever website they use on the internets.
Yeah.
And, okay, here you go, guys, just pay me at the end of the month and we'll be all good.
Yeah.
And so, to me, and for me, kind of also watching you build this program too, and having points, as we talked about just like, what could work, what could not work, and what will bring more folks in, what won't. You've definitely gained more confidence in it, and that's very apparent. From it being something that we're taking a bit of a leap of faith and being like, can I do this? Can I turn this into something, or is this just going to be some kind of a side hustle?
Sure.
From whatever else is going on, and to see that like you have put in the effort to it, you have taken whatever lessons have needed to be learned and applied them in a way. That's why we have both a morning and a knock shift at this point.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of, and it's actually kind of cool. I mean, because there'd be times we'd be the only two guys in the gym here on 8 p.m. for most nights, and now I mean there's like 4 at least most of the time when I come in here, not including me. So that, and folks wouldn't be doing that, and they wouldn't be sticking around if there wasn't something to it.
For sure. So, taking that idea, and I was just like, man, I want to run with this. And there was a few other guys that would come to the original Fighters Academy, but you were someone that was coming consistently every week, both days, putting in the work. I could tell you were hungry for it. And so I remember kind of sitting down with you one day and being like, hey, I want to try something. I don't know if it'll work, but would you like to try this out?
I remember that because we were like, I'm going to put some crushed Alka-Seltzer tablets in the litter box. What do you think is going to happen? That was a fun science experiment. Yeah. And then when we were done with that, we had the second one conversation.
Yes. And you were like, I'm down to try anything. And I was like, all right, cool. And so we started working on how do I build something out that we can have, like you said, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, MMA, it's individual, but team. And that was one thing that I really liked about the class was that it was a lot of our teammates were in there, right? And so it was nice seeing our teammates outside of the jiu-jitsu gym, but in here we're all working out. Like it's still that bonding community, and so that's something I really enjoyed. I wanted that to still be, central to what I was doing, but I wanted people to benefit more from it. And so I was like, how can we do that? And so I think we started that. So we started Fighters Academy originally October 2021.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we switched it up at the beginning of the year, 2022. And I had you come in. We did the assessment. I started working on you on the table a little bit, trying to dial in some stuff, really trying to get you to open up your chest a little bit, bring your shoulder blades back. And, as we started doing that, I'm starting to really understand, okay, how's your body actually orchestrating motion? From there, I was like, well, let me just program something like I would in my other clients. But instead of having all my notes in my iPad where I'm sitting there writing all the notes for him, well, what if I just wrote it out for him and then gave him a packet, and now he's got the workout on hand. And, if I was to have more people, I could give him his packet, give his person his packet, and then I can just bounce around when they have questions and just kind of tweak things as they're going. And we kept going with that for a while, and I still was trying to how do I fine tune things? I want to make sure that it was a good product before I really started pushing it. And we really grinded on that, man, from January probably till October later that year. It was just you and me.
That sounds about right.
I think Professor Josh started jumping in a little bit at some point in there, but you
Yeah,
were my main.
We had a
main
couple
focus.
other folks who would come in as they could.
And then later that year, I think November, that's when Eric joined. So shout out to Eric.
That's right.
Eric joined up. I think. Did you talk to Eric about what we were doing?
It's possible. Because I talked to a few folks about it, and I'd say, man, you got to get your ass up there, man, like stat yesterday.
So yeah, Eric jumped in, and so now I was like, okay, cool. Now I got 2 plus Professor Joshua. I got 3 people in here. Cool. I'm starting to learn how. So that was like kind of my next thing. I'd been just so focused on you, right? I was just working with you, and I could just follow you around. We talk, have fun, hang out. And then now I have 3 people I got to take care of at the same time. So I'm trying to learn, how do I give each person time, because I want them to feel the value of having me there and everything. So started doing that for a few months, and then all of a sudden, man, beginning this year, probably like March, out of nowhere, really, at least it felt like out of nowhere, I just started getting calls and people messaging me on Instagram, and people grabbed me at practice. Hey, I need to come in. I need to come check out what you're doing. I need to come. George was telling me this. Eric was telling me this. Like, these guys are telling me this.
And we boosted that signal, baby.
And then all of a sudden,
1,100 watts.
In the next couple of weeks, like, I got people in here. And it's been really cool, because now I'm in the next phase of learning of like, okay, now I have, the other day we had, I think, 8 in here at one time.
Sounds about right.
And I was like jumping all over the place. I think I was programmed for you on the spot that day. I had like 2 new guys that I was trying to teach them how to use the packets, how to figure things out. And I was just like getting pulled all over the place, and was like, whoa, okay, hold on. This is different. This is different. This is like out of nowhere. But it's been cool, because I feel like we put in so much work in the front end that I had that kind of one day of kind of, whoa, that's a lot. And then after that, I kind of was like, okay, this is how I'm going to kind of tweak it and make sure that I'm, still giving everyone the attention they need. And so I think the ability that you had given me to be able to really invest in creating something that I was ready to put out has really helped me work those little kinks out as we're actually going through, and I'm actually having bodies in here and seeing, okay, what else needs to happen. Because obviously we can prepare for, just like in a fight, right? You can prepare all day for a fight, but when you're actually in the cage, okay, now I'm really going to see what I need to work on, what I need to tweak. So
sink or swim. If you like swimming, better let them losers around.
Yeah. So, I really appreciate everything that you've let me just kind of work on, so that we can actually produce something that I think is going to be really changing the fight community in the area.
Happy to do it, man. And and what I would say to folks who maybe they're on the fence, maybe they heard about it a little bit, is I think we've mentioned this before in prior cuts that you've made, but at the end of the day, your health, it ain't an expense, it's an investment. And just like any investment, you're going to get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah.
And I think that anybody who's in any sport, doesn't matter what it is, well, you've probably got some sense of caring about your health, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a bit weird when we're getting hit in the head, and we understand that and all that, but at least we can take steps to avoid that, unlike this power slapping.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
That's a whole nother thing.
We can talk about it on a different podcast.
Yeah, let's see. How fast can George reach for his blood pressure medication? That's what we should call that episode.
Maybe when I talk about longevity in the next one, I'll talk about power slap and how there's no longevity.
Yeah, well, anyway, so be that as it may, the fact is a lot of folks do this for health reasons, right? And that's fine. Like, that's not even a bad thing. It's a great thing that it's a conduit that folks can get and have that be an effect of it. And with that comes an understanding. I mean, if you really want to get the most out of that, your performance, but also your health and your everyday life, right? Because, at some point we ain't going to be able to do this no more, okay? But at the end of that journey, like, regardless of how far you get with it, right? Whether it's amateur champ, going pro, even just like regional stuff, whatever it might be, the benefits at the end of that are better health for you physically, increase confidence, the drive to do better in other areas of life. I don't care who you is or what you want to do. Like, anybody can benefit from something like that. And so the more that you invest in it now, the more that you're going to get that payout, even whenever you're long done competing or whatever it might be. Right? If you got kids, then that becomes something you can pass on to them too.
Sure.
Right? And that can be a real great thing. So there's a million reasons to come in with the Victory Performance Academy, but even if you're not somebody who's big on competing, the health benefits that you get from it and what's going to do for you later on in your life, game, set, and match, Mr. President. That's all I think of.
That's awesome, man. Well, you got any last? I mean, those were some pretty good last words. Is there anything else you want to talk about or say as we wrap this up?
Just real big ups and thank you to everybody who's been a big supporter on this whole journey, man. I definitely don't always believe in myself at times, and it helps to have folks around you that remind you how to do it. You two, you and your wife Zaisha have been real big parts of that. Kim Bao is somebody that we know, and she's been there quite a bit as well. Bonafide Boxing, Michael Briggs, and I mean the list goes on and on. But it's I'm learning to accept that there are folks that are going to help with that, and that the best way that I can respect their time is by believing in myself more. So, like I said, big ups to everybody out there who's been there with that, and the ones that I ain't met yet, we're going to continue to contribute to it, because there will be many more, and I can't wait to get acquainted.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks, guys, for tuning in. I'm going to try to be putting these out semi-regularly. I got some other people lined up that I want to talk to. I'm going to do some by myself, talking about different topics that I think are maybe applicable to not just fighters, but just people in general looking for their health. So stay tuned for that, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.